drug abuse, cancer.
Good evening once again, and welcome to Doctor on Call. It is a pleasure, as always, to be with you, of course, every Tuesday evening at this time, where we share with you information that can help you as it relates to your health. All right, we think that is very important, and of course, we do have an obligation to do what we can to provide information to help. Of course, with me, Dr. Sonia Nixon, as always, and it's always a pleasure to have her with me on the program. Doc, good evening and welcome back. How are you doing?
Well, it's Valentine's Day, so I'm good.
Oh, yes, it is Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day, everybody. I really hope everybody finds that true love. I don't mean just that amorous love, the love of friends and family, and of course, your spouses and your partners. That really is meaningful and truthful. So happy Valentine's Day.
Yes,
those of us, and those who seek and trust me is out there.
You notice I have my bit of red, yes, on my scarf.
That's an apology for red, but go on.
No, that's the real thing. That's love red. You call it. That's the exact
I have to tell you why.
Valentine red. Yes. So last week we were off. Last week, of course, it was Independence Day in Grenada.
Yes.
I don't know if you had a chance to pass by the stadium, especially the expo,
where?
The stadium, the expo, for the city expo. It was really wonderful. There was some lovely displays and all of that, and I was quite pleased to see the number of people who are involved in business, small businesses, and doing what they can to help themselves. So it was indeed quite wonderful. So we're back this week. Prior to last week, we had Dr. Brathwaite with us, and we looked at colon cancer. And of course, we know February is Cancer Awareness Month. And of course, we also know that cancer is one of the leading cause of death in our country and probably in the Caribbean, So it is something that we definitely cannot stop talking about. There are many different types of cancers. Probably almost any part of your body you can run into a little problem, with cancer. So it's important that we continue to talk about it and pay attention to the signs, the symptoms, and of course, what you can do to lower the risk of you getting cancer. And of course, if by chance you do have it, what you can do to keep you living as long as possible. All right. So, Doc, the week before we spoke about colon cancer. This week we are going to touch a little bit on leukemia and some other types because it is important, and there are different types of cancer. So maybe we can start. I can probably start by asking you to just quickly an overview of what we did last week, Cancer Awareness Month, and why it is so important to keep that conversation going.
So first of all, the Ministry of Health has its designated month, Cancer Awareness, just to keep people reminding our population that, hey, this is one of our biggest problems. Cancer in Grenada is the number one cause of death. And there's some cancers that are a little more common than others. Prostate in men, breast and cervix in women, in that order. And of course, causing death. I saw a document last week, and I don't know how true it is, that says that prostate cancer, Grenadian men are the number one in the world to die from prostate cancer. Now, we've said it a million times that prostate cancer is very, very slow growing, and so that if we keep on screening, keep on looking to see if it's there, that the likelihood of dying as a result of prostate cancer is decreased. Mm-hmm. I don't know how true those statistics are, but if we cannot top it, there's a kind of record we really don't want to keep, that our men are most likely to die. From all the men in every territory in the world, that our men are most likely to die. And if that is true, I think we have to pinch ourselves really, really, really hard. And just as we've been talking, I think what we've been saying mostly is take warning, take heed, look out and see if it's there. Because it's not that we're going to prevent you from getting cancer. Some we don't know what are the real causes, how they come about. But what we know is that if we can do early diagnosis, you can treat and have what we call lengthened survivability. Living long, surviving after diagnosis. We know that some cancers run in family, and so if your family has had cancer, we're going to talk about leukemia tonight for a little while. That also, we recognize that there's some familial tendency.
That's
if
right.
your auntie or somebody has had leukemia, watch out, be aware, go check regularly.
Fantastic.
Do annual patch. Lifestyle is very important and all the rest of it. One of the things we want to talk, and we're probably going to speak a little about it again, is your obesity as a risk factor, as something that puts you at greater risk.
It is
something that increases your probability and the possibility of developing cancer and a lot of other diseases. But obesity is the new kid on the block, and every day I see more and more. We all have our challenges and we have to work with it. And it's something we're going to be addressing, even a little more intense in next month when it's World Obesity Day. But it's also one of the contributing factors to most of the cancers that we in Grenada develop. So this month, it's still time to get your breast examined. Still time to ask the doctor to examine your breast if you're over 45 or over 40 and send you for a mammogram or an ultrasound. It's still time to get your cancer screened for your cervix, do a pap smear or VIA, whatever they do. Planned Parenthood is open, waiting, running, and efficient. Okay? And they will teach women as well how to examine their breasts. And of course, it's still time for men to get their prostate exams. Every year you should, because you have to watch how that test, that PSA, prostatic specific antigen, how it grows. So they might tell you 0 to 4 is normal, and that's the truth. But if you're 0 this year and you're 3.9 next year, that's not normal.
That's cause to be concerned,
okay?
Yes.
So it is important that you get serialed every so regular time. You get your examination done. And men, I tell you, I've done prostate exam and say, oh, that's it. Oh, 5 seconds, 10 seconds, right? To get a proper examination. After you've done it one time, you realize it is not as invasive and not as... And of course, your doctor has to take precautions to ensure that he maintains your privacy and your trust and your, your confidentiality, and just that it's I mean, it's kind of hard, yes, but it's necessary. It's kind of hard the first time. When you realize if it's properly done, it's not as invasive, especially emotionally and humanly as we want to think.
What I would suggest, Doc, is that the men who are going to get their test, go in the mindset that you're going to do something that can possibly lengthen your life.
Lengthen your life.
It's a fact.
And I'll tell you what. I'll suggest further that the men who have done their pap smear. I said personally because I had a friend who lived in another city from where I live who would call me and say, hey, I'm coming to your city. I'm doing 120 miles. And he'd drive to my city to get his prostate examination done. I'm coming for my pap smear. But that's just teasing. Yes, it makes a difference. And once you've had it, all of the men I've had contact with who have done their prostate exams are converts. Says, oh, they thought it was more. So what I'm going to ask men is to talk about it with other friends. That would be an interesting conversation to bring up with your friends. And if you tell one person and they tell one, that's 2 people that know. If you tell 2 people and they tell 2 each, that's 4 that know. And we have to get a message around. Right. But tonight we're going to speak a little about leukemia.
Yes.
Which is probably a kind of a word out there, a thing that people hear and they kind of don't know about it.
Right.
Why don't we talk about leukemia? We don't talk about leukemia because it's relatively rare compared to the other forms of cancer, right?
But it does exist. It does exist.
And we hear about it a lot in children. Those of us who follow, like St. Jude's Hospital, which is a cancer hospital for children, we see a lot of children with alopecia or loss of hair loss, who are on therapy because they have mostly leukemias. Those are it's more thing, but we will talk about it.
Right. So I just wanted to share because Doc, one of the sites that I follow a lot in terms of medical information is Mayo Clinic, a very credible site, and folks, you can check it out yourself. Go to Google Mayo
very
Clinic.
Educational.
Yes, MAYO Mayo Clinic. You can definitely take information from there because it is credible. And Doc, I just wanted to just share a brief overview about leukemia before we go into the discussion. So it says leukemia is the cancer of the body's blood-forming tissues, including the bone marrow and the lymphatic system. It says there are many types of leukemia. Some forms are common in children, other forms occur mostly in adults, and it usually involves the white blood cells. So I will just pause here, Doc, and just go back to the top. It is a type of cancer of the body's blood-forming tissues, including the bone marrow and the lymphatic system. Let's just unpack that a little bit, including the bone marrow and the lymphatic system. Let's talk a little bit about that.
So you like chicken bone, right?
Oh yes. Mm-hmm.
So when you open a bone, you see all of this thing. There's some fat, but there's a lot of darkness. These are blood cells that have been formed because most of our blood cells are actually formed in the bones.
In the bones, right. Mm-hmm.
All right. Leukemia is the cancer of mostly of the blood cells, some of the blood cells, especially the white blood cells. White blood cells have one main duty. We talked about it a lot during COVID.
Oh, definitely.
That white blood cells is your defense. When we talked about some white blood cells will take care of bacteria, some will take care of viruses, and we talked about, right? But all these white blood cells are leukocytes, right? They have different kinds. So you have, if your defense system is everybody who does defending, you have security guards, police, what do you call it? The guys on the sea, Coast Guard, SSU, RRU, whoever it is. Those are all the defenders, and they have a different role. But you need to get some. You need to always have cells that can work, right? You can't take old people to go there and be the ones doing security guard. You need to, after a while, you send them home and you bring in new ones, the China does that. In the same way, there's a time when the blood cells are produced over a certain time. They have a lifespan. At the end of the lifespan, they're there. But your body kind of set up, it's set up. Like how you put your clock to alarm, it's automated, okay? It's going to happen. So your body knows, the red blood cells are being changed or the white blood cells are being changed. And they change and they put up whatever numbers they have and they stop. Once your body loses that capacity to make it happen as it should happen, or like in the case of the those rapidly growing leukemias, you kind of lose your checker, So you have a whole lot of white blood cells, or sometimes you just don't have any. But in an acute situation, you have a whole lot of white cells, but they're immature. They can't really do the work. They're too weak. Okay, so it's like white blood cells that not have enough food. They don't have enough machinery within them to do the work that's called. And that is what we called. That's one form of leukemia. Really, the cells are not producing in the manner, right? We don't have control. We talked about it when we spoke about cancers otherwise. Cancer occurs when an organ overproduces cells and it grows and it grows and it proliferates, as we say, just open itself and then, like in the case of breast cancer, you have this tissue growing into your lymph nodes, or the glands in your body, grows into different places along the tract. Those are the challenges we have when we have leukemia. But because the tissue especially in the bone marrow and other tissues like the lymphatic system, the lymph nodes that produce these cells, just not
functioning properly.
Not working properly again. The machinery kind of get crazy. Like you need to change the fuse, right? So that is what it is. What do we
Right.
see happen when people have leukemia? The truth is, adults might have leukemia for a very long time,
Mm-hmm.
right? Might be there in their body for a very long time. You know, we all say, boy, I feel I'm tired being tired. I'm just tired, but I'm working so hard. I'm tired, but maybe because I'm not eating properly. I'm tired because my husband's stressing me out and he gone to his girlfriend for Valentine's Day, God forbid. I'm tired. I just don't feel good, you know? I keep getting colds. I have a cold all the time, you know? I get infections. I see bruises on my skin,
Mm-hmm.
right? You see like little spots. I can see like, you know, when look suck you? Those kind of blotches. Some people see. You don't hit yourself.
Doc, what you know about liquor? What,
They don't say,
what you know about when liquor was sucking people, Doc?
boy, you see the back of me? That's mountains behind me. I live in the country.
So you have liquor with
And
that?
your dog barking and frogs tweeting and all of that.
All right.
And I grown up seeing Liggeroo flying off the hill. That's what they say, okay? That's what fuck them. But
I wonder. Okay, but we folks, just a little light moment, you know. That's
it's a light moment. But no, you know those blotches we see, and people say that. Those are
Yeah.
folklore. But people say, but sometimes that's actually what it is.
Yes.
You don't have the capacity because you lose your platelets. Your body's not producing enough. Platelets are fragments of your white cells that actually take care of clotting. If you don't have sufficient, or if you have too many, you may have challenges. Okay, remember, it's not only quantity; sometimes it's quality. You feel tired, you lose weight, you look pale, you have anemia as well, and a whole lot of symptoms that might just be everyday symptoms. I remember just coming to medical school, and my girlfriends. You guys, you remember when I had the Abu Bakr going around?
yes. Mm-hmm.
Right. This is 1988.
Around the 1990, yeah, they're about 1990.
1990.
Yeah. Was it 90?
About 1988, and Abu Bakr
Oh,
is
was
going
it?
around. And my girlfriend's sister gets Abu Bakr. She thought, and it wouldn't go away. This is November of that year, and early the following year in January, she goes there because this cold is unrelenting. It's not subsiding. It doesn't matter what she takes, and they put on antibiotics and they give her everything else, and she doesn't get any better. And then when they take a look at the cells, what the doctor will do is, you know, you can go and get a full blood count, as we call a CBC, right? And they look at your cells. But then the doctor, they can just count the cells. There's one thing counting, but there's the other thing of looking and see what the cells, the morphology, how they made up. And when they looked at it, they realized she had some cells predominated that shouldn't be, because you still have to have a balance, okay? You have to have a balance. There's a certain percentage that each of these white blood cells hold within a volume of cells. So if you take 100 mils, right, like 100 mils is like 3 ounces, right? So much, not so much. 5 mils is a teaspoon, so 20 teaspoons of blood, right? And you look at a vial, and you look at a space, and you put it on a film, and you start looking at the different cells. If the whole shape, their contents are changed, you might be guided as to what's going on. So that's looking at the morphology of the cells. And the morphology is changed. And then you'd figure it out. Because all along it's just a common cold, because the person shows symptoms, you know, having a cold, head running, or my sinuses probably, having a sore throat, I have a headache, I get fevers at night, I've been losing a little weight, well, because I'm not eating because of this fever. Do you understand? But at the end of the day, when you check and you look at the cells, you realize, oh, no. You look at the appearance of lymph nodes in the neck, in the armpits, sometimes in the abdomen, you realize, no, this is more than just a common cold. But I tell you, my friend's sister developed this cold that wouldn't go away from November. And in January, she was diagnosed with leukemia and died not very long after, despite intervention. But that's why sometimes if you have a cold or symptoms that you just find not subsiding, you should really go to the doctor. Because for the most part, leukemia is rare. So even if you have those symptoms, it may not be leukemia. But also, for the most part, if you're diagnosed early, you can be treated. Yes, there are some crazy types. There are some very erratic types that just take you and take you away if you get sick. You know, take us out of this world if we get sick. because our body loses capacity, one, to form clots, and of course to prevent us from getting infections. So those might be the situations that eventually make us die. And these are people who become very, 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 very ill. And I've seen it. I had a friend who died a few years ago, 2012, right? And within a week and a half, he was gone.
Right.
Right? He had an acute myeloid thing. So his very profound, the things in your lymph nodes and stuff, just couldn't work properly.
Right. Yeah, I was about to ask you about that because Mayo also mentioned issues with the lymphatic system. Just briefly explain
because
that.
the lymphatic system actually helps to provide the cells. What you have, they show up. Right? So you see all these lymph nodes because they're really just trying to make cells. They're trying to work hard. So they're overworking. And like when you go to the gym and you're pumping iron, and the muscles get heavier. That's why your right hand is bigger than your left hand if you're right-handed, because you're always using these muscles. So what you see, these lymph nodes start grow, and then more and more of them try to work, and they're not able to give what is happening. Just because the cells get a wrong message from the origin.
Right. But how before we go to that, let's look at some of the symptoms of leukemia and probably when should someone see their physician.
So I think if you have all of those, because the symptomatology is very vague. Fatigue, I'm tired. Having this fever, I can't figure it out. I'm having a head cold, I'm getting sore throats often, I'm getting urinary tract, infections often. Things are happening that are not me. Go to the doctor.
What about like an enlarged liver or spleen? Some of these inner organs. But enlarged liver is what your doctor finds. Right. Okay.
Because the tissue in there also overworking to try and get stuff done.
There's something that also happens that people seem to be. I've seen it happen quite a bit. Nosebleeds. People would bleed from their nose. Yeah,
it's not just nosebleeds in the case of people with leukemia. So, like when I talk about the platelets, okay, the platelets are fragments of your white cells that actually. I'm having challenges with my internet. I keep going in and out. I can see it. Okay. They are fragments of your white cells. Fragments that actually help to form, for you to clot appropriately, right? If your platelet count goes down very low, you're not able, and that's a bad sign in trying to monitor patients whom we're managing with, who we're trying to treat with leukemia, because you can't expect them to bleed, right? So you might just brush your teeth and start bleed, or you might pass the stools and start bleed. You sneeze and you bleed. Because anything, you get a cut and it bleeds excessively, right? That is what is called thrombocytopenia. Platelets from thrombocyto, as in cells, penia meaning there's a lack of.
Okay.
So you have this lack of platelets that helps to form the clots. You don't help you to clot. There's a balance in clotting that we can't take too long to discuss. So you don't want any clots in your blood, but you want outside of the veins that you can clot. So if you get a cut.
So if you get a cut, you want clotting so that you don't bleed too much.
But in the case of patients with leukemia, there's this thrombocytopenia, and it's very prognostic. It can give you an idea as to what is happening. If you can get your platelet counts up, you say things are looking good. We getting the platelet counts improving, because you don't want your patient at one stage to have any little thing that might cause them to bleed. And the bleeding might not be external, it might be internal, and you may not see it and the patient passes.
Right. What about excessive sweating at night and so? Is that also a concern?
That is related mostly to nocturnal fevers, right? And fever breaks, you get excessive sweating. So that's what is happening.
Right. There's also, I've seen sometimes, or there are people who have these little swellings at different parts of the bodies. You hear about things like lymph nodes and they're swollen. Is there any correlation?
Lymph nodes have an anatomical placement. So you have lymph nodes under your chest, you have lymph nodes in your neck, you have in your armpit. You say you have a, what do you call it?
A gland. A gland, yes.
So you get a cut. Right, let me give you a good example of a healthy functioning lymph node. So you're over there, Shorthand, doing shorthand to get crayfish up in St. David's River?
No, it's in Tivoli River.
Tivoli.
Tivoli best river.
I go up in that river, I don't see no crayfish, but go on. So you shove hand or you push your hand and a ling bite you, right? And you don't care about it, you go and play ball with it and it gets infected. And still not paying it any mind. And then one day there's really a lot of infections going on. But you also have pain in your
armpit.
Up in your armpit.
And even by the groin, that's another common area.
If you have an infection in your foot, that will happen.
Right.
It means that those lymph nodes are actually doing their work efficiently.
Right.
What they're doing is producing these white blood cells in sufficient quantity, and the white blood cells engulf whatever bacteria is there and eat it away.
Okay.
So that's an example of how our lymphatic system works efficiently. Because after your mother might take you to the doctor and give you an injection, maybe a penicillin injection, or they give you some antibiotics by mouth, right? And 2 days you don't feel the thing anymore. It starts going down. So that it means it may never go right back, but what a gland does is get ready to work, turn up all its engines, so it gets big and it gets painful because it's really overworking, and that's a different scenario.
Right. What about so in terms of how the symptoms present, are they similar to, let's say, things like the common cold, or that can probably confuse?
Yeah, like I said earlier,
confuse someone.
Anemia, just the symptoms are generally vague. You kind of become concerned when you have an athletic person, somebody who's okay, who all of a sudden just have all these symptoms and just getting very ill and not going away. It's something the physician would have to have in the back of my mind. Am I doing it to somebody who has leukemia here? Especially if there's a family history of leukemia.
Right.
You have to consider, what's going on here? Maybe this is a case of leukemia in my patient, and we'd have to, you take his blood, you do a smear. The people in the lab who are trained to do this look at it and say, hey, this is what I'm seeing here. And there are other diseases that might look like it, right? But doing a blood smear, after you see what the relationship in the number of cells are like, usually helps you to make that diagnosis. Or if you have lymph nodes that appear, oftentimes these lymph nodes are non-tender, okay? They don't have to do inflammation. So those lymph nodes, the doctor can actually excise a lymph node and do a biopsy, meaning that he takes a piece of tissue, very thin, cuts it very, very, very thin, puts it on a slide, and the cytologist or the pathologist, the persons who are trained in that area, examine the cells, will look and say, hey, this looks like X, looks like this. And it will tell you exactly what kind of leukemia you have.
Right. Someone is asking about the correlation. Is there any between leukemia and sickle cells?
Not up front, not that I know.
Okay.
So sickle cell is a disease with which you're born.
Yes,
Sickle cell is like being a girl or a boy. Nobody can change it. You have that tendency genetically encoded in your being, right? It's like being born girl or boy. That's the clearest example. Leukemia does not come encoded in your, might be genetic, but it might not manifest itself. It might manifest itself if you're smoking, or if you're exposed to radiation, if you're not taking care of your body, if you've had cancer before, because I've known people who have other forms of cancer, who may develop. I've known people with lymphomas, and which is cancer just of the lymph nodes, and I've known people with myeloma, multiple myeloma, which is just the bone marrow alone, right? Who have, in the end, had leukemia. And sometimes, according to the chemotherapeutic agent you get, you might have what we call ablation of those cells, kill them off, and then you have a leukemia as well. So,
okay.
But sickle cell, no. Sickle cell is a totally different disease. Comes, like I said, you had a girl or boy, or you have sickle cell or you don't, and that is not going to change in your life.
Okay, wonderful. So, Doc, let's take our first break. When we come back, we would look at the classifications of leukemia. So, stay with us, folks. We'll be back with you in just...
Which is academic, but
right.
Academic for the physicians. You know, people just want to know if I have leukemia or not, and what kind of therapy I'm going to get.
We'll be back in a moment, folks. Stay with us.
Drug abuse. Cancer.
Believe in our strength, we'll stand by you. Protection from all perils, big and small. Reassurance we give, it's so clear to see. Peace of mind, that's our service guarantee. We look after all our family. Yes, we do at every opportunity.
Antilian Group, underwriters of all classes of insurance solutions for your protection and investment. Live well financially.
Do you have muscular pain that no one can find a solution for? Are you tired of taking meds for joints and other pains? Hills and Valley Medicare Center on Grenville Street, St. George is here to help you heal. We will help you map a path to your full recovery. Visit us Monday to Saturday for a consultation with our on-site doctor, physiotherapist, and massage team. You will be glad you did. Our Medicare Center, a proud member of the Hills and Valley group of companies. On the hilltop or in the valley, we are with you wherever life takes you. Hills and Valley Pharmacy. Your health is our business.
Your life is yours, your future's in your hands. Your body is yours, that's why you need a plan. You gotta plan your family, avoid HIV, get the education from the Grenada Planned Parenthood Association.
We offer STI screening, gender-based violence counseling, prenatal and postnatal checks, injectables, condoms, pap smears, and other sexual reproductive services. Open Monday to Friday, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. The Pointe Street, St. George's. Whether male or female, it doesn't matter. We're here to make your life better.
Grenada Planned Parenthood Association.
For appointments, call 440-3341.
A GPPA clinic may be in a health facility in your area. Information can be found via Facebook at the Grenada Planned Parenthood Association. Clinics are in partnership with the Ministry of Health and GrandChap. This ad is sponsored by Canada Fund for Local Initiatives.
Here is a little known fact. There is only one place in Grenada that you can get an MRI scan done. That place is Spicile Imaging Center. Yes, Grenada, that's the truth. Other centers could offer you other scans, but Spicile Imaging provides an authentic MRI scan. Here's another little known fact. Spicile Imaging has 3 centers. We operate at Grenville, the Carnage, and at the Ocean House, Grandlands. We provide the widest range of laboratory tests and services. CT scans, x-rays, mammograms, ultrasounds, and a host of other services. We are fully staffed by a team of family doctors and specialists. Call us today at 444-7679 or 440-1500. or visit any of our 3 locations. Spicile Imaging, from seeing the doctor to getting lab tests, scans, and pharmacy services. We are here to take care of you.
Last week on All Climate Reality.
What we're encountering is something we're calling an enhanced greenhouse effect. This is a phenomenon where the gases that create the greenhouse of the atmosphere are increasing in concentration.
The amount of concrete that we have in our society now compared to 30 years ago is amazing, because when the sun hits that, it's not getting into the soil where we have carbon sequestration happening. So that bounces back and goes back into the atmosphere and increase the carbon dioxide stock. But a lot of people want to live on the slope, so we deforesting the slopes, and trees is one of the biggest inhibitors of carbon dioxide. They take in so much of it. So every tree we cut, means that there is going to be an increase in us producing greenhouse gas, and increasing our greenhouse gas.
Join us this Wednesday at 8 p.m. on Our Climate Reality as the discussion delves into the impacts of climate change. GPN Television, Channel 7 and 11, K105, and all our social media platforms.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Doctor and Call. In case you're just joining us, Dr. Nixon is with me, and we're talking about leukemia. Yeah, we've basically explained so far what is leukemia, how it happens, and of course some of the symptoms that go along with it. Doc, just before the break, we mentioned the classification. Maybe we could just as a matter of information, just briefly mention, how they're classified.
So leukemia, again, you're gonna start that they form these leukemic cells, these abnormal cells, right? Blood cells are formed mostly in our bone marrow. We talked about that in the morning, right? So these cells come and they multiply rapidly. These cells that get a wrong message, and they start to multiply very rapidly. And what it is almost like suppress the other good cells that's supposed to be forming. So sometimes you can see a lot of, because they kind of look like the cells, and they kind of look like your normal cells, but it's not your normal cells. So in some cases, you see a lot of young cells, because blood cells go through different phases, right? So you have two sets of, you have red blood cells, right, that carry oxygen and other nutrition and stuff, right, materials, so tissues and organs, right? Then you have the white cells, and we say that's this basically to do with protection from infections. Then you have platelets that help you to clot, right? Those are the principal forms of blood cells that you'd have, right? What you have coming out of that, as when you have the proliferation, is two sets of cells. The myeloid cells develop into red blood cells, platelets, and certain types of white blood cells, like the basophils, eosinophils, and stuff. And then you have lymphoid cells, right, that basically contain just white blood cells, and those are the lymphocytes and the other, which basically take care of kill bacteria. Okay, but you have all of these things circulating around your body, and sometimes they're not useful because they look like it, but they're bogus. Okay? That's what happened. It looks like it, but they're bogus. So when you look on the cells, even if your body seems producing cells, it's not producing good cells. It's producing different form of cells. All right? And they produce a lot because they kind of spiral out of control. They produce a whole lot of cells. Right? But in producing those lot of cells, it's not allowing the good cells to grow. And that is what's happening. Your body is there with all of these cells that are basically useless, right? So what happens to you? You can't keep healthy because you have a set of cells that normally should take care of any little infection, And we come in contact with different things, viruses, bacteria, molds, you name it, rickettsias, you name it, right? Mycoplasma, we come in contact with these things every day, but because we have a healthy defense system or white blood cells, we can go on. All right? We're fine. We don't even realize that we've come in contact or we've had an infection, right? If you don't have enough red blood cells, you get anemia, right? So they too are choked, or you have some bogus one among us that is not real cells, right? You get anemia. So your body doesn't get enough nutrition, it doesn't get enough oxygen, right? And so you get ill, right? So your body can't function properly. So according to how fast your disease develops, you can have an acute leukemia or chronic leukemia. In acute leukemia, the cells divide rapidly and the disease progresses quickly. So you get very sick very fast, all right? You get very sick very fast. We see that a lot in children because remember that children are on their own producing, their cells are dividing rapidly, more frequently because they're growing. So they need so you see acute leukemias a lot in our children, right? So within a few weeks of our developing leukemia, you already start feeling with
the speed at which it develops.
The speed at which, and the damage it does, and the damage it does, and the work that it's supposed to do that it doesn't do. Okay, that kind of default, right? And like I said, it is the most common cancer in children, and we see it all the time. The kids, St. Jude's Hospital. St. Jude's Hospital is a hospital for cancer for children, where anybody's allowed to go. You can turn up at St. Jude's, you know. You can just turn up.
Right.
If you have a diagnosis, you can just go. They accept all children who have cancers. And then you have the chronic leukemias. Chronic because it's probably going to last a little longer. Chronic because it's slower. Chronic because it's that you don't even realize that's what's going on, and probably for years you can have it. All right. Sometimes children have chronic leukemias, but it's more common in adults. Okay. So basically that's what it is. And then the other thing has to do with which kind of cell type, which kind of cells. Is it going to go to the myeloid cells? So are the red blood cells affected more? Are the white blood cells, some white blood cells, and the platelets affected more? So are you more likely to bleed? Are you more likely to have anemia? Are you more likely to have infections, right? That is in a myelogenous. So imagine if you have acute it's called myeloblastic, and those are the ones that people really die quickly, because it prevents so much of your body's natural functioning from happening. So bacteria, viruses, whatever thing, sweep in there, and on top of you're anemic, right? And none of your muscles, nothing functions well. Nothing can actually function well. And so if you have an acute of the myeloblastic form or the myelogenous form, you're more likely to be very ill and probably die.
Okay.
If you're not diagnosed early and treated appropriately. With the lymphocytic one, it's just two sets of lymphocytes, white blood cells, are affected. And if it's chronic, it takes a little longer, a little longer to develop, and it affects a smaller component of that defense system. So the possibility of surviving tends to be a little better.
Wonderful.
Right.
And of course they've also made mention of the risk factors. I think we briefly touched it, but what are some of the risk factors?
We talked about smoking. Remember we talk every week that smoking killed 50% of people who hang out with it. If you're exposed to radiation, remember Chernobyl?
Yes, in Russia, yes.
Right. And remember when we had the Japanese tsunami?
That's right, that destroyed the
nuclear plant that went off. So people are looking, these persons in the communities are persistently being followed to see how their blood changes, what their lymph nodes look like. So these are people who would be objects of study, progressive study, to see whether or not it's going to happen.
Yeah, and the radiation
so people who are exposed to radiation, and we see it. People who live in territories where there is more radiation in the soil, or remember the Indian situation where they had some plant that had gone bad and they didn't tell the people, and they sued. It was a U.S. company, and they sued for billions of dollars because people developed cancer.
Right.
So people who are at risk are some people who are exposed to radiation are at risk for it. If you have a family, yes. There are other debilitating illnesses that might put you at risk. If you have had leukemia or any cancer before, you're also at risk for developing leukemia.
What about genetic disorders?
If you're a man or a child, you're at greater risk, huh? I'm sorry?
Right, yeah. Actually, I meant to ask you that too. If there was any gender preference, yes, as it relates to
yes, the
leukemias.
men tend to have leukemia a little more, and the children, because like I tell you, they're making cells so quickly that they can have a lot of mistakes happen with the cells.
Okay.
But they also have the greater survivability.
Right. What about things like genetic disorder? So if there's some genetic abnormality...
Yes, I understand also that one of the things they talk, people who have Down syndrome in particular are at greater risk of developing. I don't know the other genetic disorder, but Down syndrome is probably one of the most common genetic disorders. So we always have to look out for our our persons or relatives who have Down syndrome developing leukemia.
Right. And of course, you mentioned, of course, exposure to different types of chemicals and things like that. And of course, smoking, which is a risk factor for almost any illness.
Tobacco in particular. We don't know what other things are. There's been a recent trend among our young people to vape, which is an alternative way of taking in the very addictive substance. What's that again in tobacco?
The carcinogen or?
Yeah, what's the name of it? I'm lost for words. So,
the nicotine. You're talking about nicotine?
Nicotine,
right.
Yes, nicotine. Right. Also, exposure to industrial carcinogens, chemicals. There's a study in Boston several years ago that discovered that the women who do janitorial work. So there's a population in coming from a population, meaning an ethnic population that like how we go away and we're the babysitters. Black people do babysitting. West Indian people do babysitting or they do nursing. There's another population that does a lot of janitorial work. They have a lot of janitorial companies and stuff. And they found that the women were having challenges, cancers and stuff from the use of some of the constant use and inhalations of chemicals and stuff. So, people who do, so I'm going to read what I see here. Benzene and formaldehyde. Formaldehyde is that compound that's used to embalm bodies or just preserve dead tissue to make it not rot, right? They are known to predispose us to developing
leukemia.
Benzene, for example, is used to make plastic, rubbers, dyes, pesticide, drugs, and detergent. Formaldehyde, of course, we know what is a billion-dollar household product, right? And it's also found in soaps and shampoos and cleaning products. So those are things that we know. So I saying to you, that population of people who do a lot of housekeeping work and use all of these cleaning projects, these chemically derived cleaning products, were found to have a very high risk of cancers, particularly leukemias, right? We talk about the genetic disorders like Down syndrome, which is common, the neurofibromatosis. I have seen one child here with neurofibromatosis, where you have tumors growing out of the skin and create, especially the face, can create lots of deformities. The skin look thick like ghost skin, and it runs. It's the nerves that the skin keep replenishing, and you get elephantitis and really grotesque malformations on the skin. That's neurofibromatosis. Persons with that condition are also at risk, as well as Klinefelter syndrome, which is a syndrome related to your sexual genetics. Okay?
Right. Okay.
We talked about family history. So, if somebody in your family has been diagnosed with leukemia, be aware that you're at risk as well.
Right. Okay. So you need to pay attention. What about of course leukemia and diet? Anything anything in there?
So you know my thing. What the hell is pasta?
Not pasta, the little packet.
No, but seriously, so a lot of the foods we eat have a lot of chemicals that we can't even identify. Makes it taste nice or it preserves it, right? But we know that some of the chemicals in our foods are carcinogenous. In other words, they are likely to generate the presence or the development of cancer, carcinogens. Okay? So we kind of still need to stick to our natural foods, right? A lot of the compounds, especially the ones that you can't pronounce, really shouldn't be eaten.
Right.
Yeah.
So
how are we going to figure out whether somebody has leukemia or not? You have to have an index. Your doctor must feel suspicious that something is going on. You must feel suspicious that, this doesn't look so good. I have been sick for too long. especially if you're a person who don't get colds, or you have the risk factors, right? You know, a simple blood test, just doing a full blood count, right? The doctor needs to examine you, of course, needs to ask you some questions, right? So especially if that index of suspicion occur, and depending on the answers, you know, that the doctors are able to get from the doctor is able to get from his patient, he should develop that suspicion that this might be a condition, and he said he would send you to the lab, right? We talked about bleeding gums, which is something you can see. Do you look pale? Do you look like you have anemia? Right? Do you have these like Legaroo socks? But it also can be just little, what you call petechia. They're not large, right? On your skin, like if you have freckles, right? But that's what those bluish, blackish marks look like under your skin. You can't erase them. All right? So, you know, some can have a good thing, you touch it and it disappears. No, but those are there because they're embedded under the epidermis. All right? And then he looks to see there any swollen lymph nodes. Right? There may be lymph nodes that you can't find. So you can also send it for an ultrasound. Look at the neck, look at the abdomen, see if those lymph nodes are enlarged. Do a full blood count before all of that, though, and see how the cells are changed, right? And remember I told you about doing a smear where they examine the blood cell. So the person in the lab, you tell them you want a smear, a full blood count with a smear, and they put a drop of blood on the thing and examine directly the morphology, the situation, the appearance of the individual lymphocytes, the blood cells in general. Right?
Right.
And of course you can do a bone marrow biopsy. But sometimes you don't need to do a bone marrow biopsy because you would have already been able to decide, to elucidate whether or not there is actually cancer.
Right.
But it might tell you just what the extent is, how much of your bone marrow is actually functioning. Remember, that is where it's manufactured. You have to figure, is this factory shut down? How am I going to treat my patients? If you do a bone marrow biopsy and you still have some cells that kind of manage around, you might realize, oh, this is probably actually chronic leukemia, right? We probably can use chemotherapeutics and all of new fancy medications, the biologicals that are existing, right? That kind of boost back your immune system and make it reproduce the cells that are missing. But you may also need radiotherapy, right?
Right.
You may also need a bone marrow transplant or stem cell transplant. What are stem cells? Stem cells are those original cells in your body, right? That can differentiate into anything. So you can get stem cell transplant from a fetus because it has cells that are not yet thing. Some people can find stem cells out of newborns, like from cord blood and stuff, right? So you can do stem cells. There's a lot of research going on. I actually had a friend who had stem cell transplant. He's passed. And what it does is regenerate, inject it into the lymph node, into the marrow, and it regenerates. Because what it does is kind of read the coding. Because it's like buying. I want to get a very easy example. It's like buying clear nail polish, right? And putting it into a bottle that has red nail polish.
Okay.
And you get a lot of red. The clear nail polish can actually generate itself to look like red nail polish because you have that little bit in there. But it really just does it on its own. Right? So those are stem cells. There is a lot of research. And because stem cells can differentiate into anything, I think there's a lot of holdback as to how often we use stem cells. This is my opinion, okay? Because if we thought that stem cell worked, we'd have given everybody stem cell transplant, right? But remember, stem cells can differentiate into anything, and they can differentiate into other cancers. Right? They can make anything. But there has been a significant amount of good outcomes. So stem cell is still one of our way to deal with it.
I just want to share something as a matter of information. Leukemia is the 10th most common cancer in the U.S.
In the U.S.
Accounting for 3.2% of all new cancer cases. Leukemia Yes, all new cases. Leukemia can affect anyone, but it's more common among people who are ages 65 to 74. Assigned male at birth and Caucasian or white. So there is some ethnic correlation with leukemia.
Yeah, because we don't see a lot of leukemia in our children, you know.
Right.
Yeah. Not that it doesn't occur. There's actually one form of leukemia which is very rare, and I really can't remember, despite how much I've tried. There's one kind. It's very, very, very rare. Guess who has the highest incidence in the world?
I don't know.
Guess.
Asians?
Oui.
Yeah.
Grenada.
Grenada. Okay.
So it's rare, but if it happens, it's likely to be one of all you. Since I'm a Chinese.
Right. Now, so
it is that and that's significant. So we still look.
Right.
Okay, because we have that one specific kind, rare, but we are likely we have the highest incidence. So even if you have one per year or one every 10 years, is ours.
Right. So final question I'm going to ask you on leukemia, as it relates to the diagnosis. So I feel this, tiredness. I feel drained. All of that. And from time to time, I get a little nosebleed, and all of these things. And I decide, you know what, Doc, I'm coming to see you because I'm just not in it, as the folks say. What kind of examination you do to sort of diagnose whether or not I have leukemia?
Well, our diagnosis, we kind of talked about it. Let's just put it in a package, right? Your doctor has to ask you questions.
Right.
Questions. Tell them what you feel, and we really should ask the patient that are you feeling tired? How long have you been feeling tired? What do you mean by that? What fever? You say you had 3 colds. So often were you getting colds? Ooh. Can you hear me?
Yes, I'm hearing you.
Can you see me?
Very well.
Okay, because I'm not seeing anything. Anyway, how often are you getting colds? What else you having? Have you lost any weight? We ask the questions that we expect to be identified. That we expect to come up with. Tell me that you see me, because I'm not seeing anything on my screen.
No, I'm seeing you. You're pretty okay. And I have the monitor in front of me, so you're pretty okay.
All right. So once I'm there, it's okay. So we ask the questions. Examine the patient. You have to examine somebody. Are they anemic? Is there evidence of weight loss? Okay. Can I find any lymph nodes? Bruising. Are there bruising in the gums? That's something you can see easily, right? Do they have the petechiae, or the spots that look like they're bleeding under the skin, like they suck the skin and break these blood vessels? You don't really want to do like rectal examination and stuff. You don't want a patient, you don't know what's going on in there. But they might refer to the fact, look, every time I go to the bathroom, there's blood at the end of this. There could be a million other reasons why, but within the ambit of stuff, you want to examine. And then, you take the patient weight, you look in the blood pressure, you check the urine, you check the blood sugar and all the rest of it. And then you send your patient to the lab to do a CBC, right? They go to the lab to get a CBC done. They go to the lab to get you ask for a blood smear, you go to the lab, you might want a chest x-ray, okay? You might even want, when you get a smear, if you have lymph nodes, you might send them for the surgeon to do a biopsy, okay, to look and see what's going on in this lymph node here, okay? You might want to do an abdominal ultrasound or even a CAT scan to see if you have some lymph nodes in the abdomen that are infiltrated by whatever's going on. But that's acute leukemia is a story for the internist, and sometimes with the help of the surgeon, right? So you want to make sure that you send your patient, you refer your patient very early to the person who can help them. That's what you want to do.
Okay, wonderful. So that we're going to take
and from there it moves on, because it's also from the internist and / oncologist, because if it's a cancer, the oncologist,
yes,
and specifically there's an individual called a hematologist whose specialty is in diseases of the blood. Because remember, leukemia is a disease of the blood and blood-forming tissues.
You know, I have often heard, and it might sound a little humorous, but I've often heard people say, and it's related to leukemia, that you have to go and change your blood. Have you ever heard that?
Because sometimes doing bone marrow transplant means that what they do first, they have to literally kill all of your bone marrow, ablation, use chemotherapeutic agents that takes out all of that affected bone marrow, and then they get bone marrow from somebody else
and implant,
who's very genetically akin to you, right? Very, 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 very close. It's called a match, right? Somebody matches you. So like you have a twin, you guys. If you have an identical twin, you're most likely have the same blood type, the same genetics, everything,
same
right?
makeup, yeah.
So they can donate. So they go into the hip and they get a sample of the marrow. And when after they've, imagine now, if they give you chemotherapy to get rid of all you're tired. So when you're better, when you're feeling good, they put that in there and hope it proliferates. It takes a little time. I guess they give it a little fertilizer, a little boost to make it grow, and that's what.
All right.
Stem cell, similarly, okay? But those are advanced therapies. We don't have stem cell. I mean, I can tell you, even the US is still basically under research, right? So people will get it. You can say, I want to do this. I'm going to take a chance. No, I want this. This is what I want. It costs. It's very costly because it's still high technology. But then you have other medications like I said, the biologicals, which are the new things, the new immune medications that often can help with renewal of the cells. So the whole thing, some people require transfusions because you're so anemic, right? Especially if you have low platelets. Remember, if your platelets are low, you can bleed to death. So sometimes you get platelets. If you're very anemic, you get packed cells, so that you don't have other challenge. You don't have other challenges like going into heart failure and stuff. So you need to have somebody who's specialist and specially trained to manage you once you have leukemia.
Right. One final one before we go to the break, and when we come back, we'll take the call.
You mean the last final one?
Yes. Actually, while you were talking, something just came to me. Osteoporosis, because we mentioned leukemia and the bone marrow, very, very, very close related. The cells are formed in the bone, all of that. So osteoporosis, we know that has to do with weakened bones and all this other thing.
Yeah, but that's a different part of your bone.
Yeah. Right, but any correlation at all between, or can one lead to the other, or can someone with leukemia maybe end up having?
People get chemotherapeutics and because sometimes you use a lot of steroids in treating people with cancers, diseases, and that can promote osteoporosis, loss of bone. But if you buy chicken leg, osteoporosis occurs in the hard part of the bone. The bone marrow thing is where the leukemia problem initiates.
Okay. All right.
Because the calcium, osteoporosis is low, is almost like leaching, loss, absence. inadequate amount of calcium present, because the calcium helps to form those, when you're building a house and you put steel in there and everything linked up,
right.
You do the mesh, you take steel and you tie it up and you do whatever you're going to do. That's what the calcium does. It forms these what you call trabeculae that form the structure, of the bones.
Okay, wonderful. So we take a break, folks, our final break. When we come back, we would open our telephone lines and we would take your questions. Those of you on the WhatsApp, you can send us a WhatsApp. The number is 435-2041. And those are our friends on Facebook. You can also send us your question via that medium as well. So we take a break. We'll be back in just a moment.
We'll stand by you. Protection from all perils, big and small. Reassurance we give. It's so clear to see. Peace of mind, that's a service guarantee. We look after all our family. Yes, we do at every opportunity.
Antillian Group, underwriters of all classes of insurance solutions for your protection and investment. Live well financially.
Here is a little known fact. There is only one place in Grenada that you can get an MRI scan done. That place is Spicile Imaging Center. Yes, Grenada, that's the truth. Other centers could offer you other scans, but Spicile Imaging provides an authentic MRI scan. Here's another little known fact. Spicile Imaging has 3 centers. We operate at Grenville, the Carnage, and at the Ocean House, Grandlands. We provide the widest range of laboratory tests and services. CT scans, x-rays, mammograms, ultrasounds, and a host of other services. We are fully staffed by a team of family doctors and specialists. Call us today at 444-7679 or 440-1500. or visit any of our 3 locations. Spicile Imaging, from seeing the doctor to getting lab tests, scans, and pharmacy services. We are here to take care of you.
Have you heard about the new Soft Weave bathroom tissue with total hygiene? As hygiene and safety have taken center stage, our bathroom tissue is now manufactured with 3 different technologies to offer the best protection for you and your family. UVC light technology for a safe and effective disinfection process, eliminating 99.9% of microorganisms. Also, production at high temperatures, killing all types of germs and bacteria. And it's pH controlled with delicate fibers to prevent irritation for even sensitive skin. Soft Weave Total Hygiene Bathroom Tissue, available in supermarkets and shops island-wide. Visit Soft Weave Caribbean Facebook or Instagram pages for more information.
Do you have muscular pain that no one can find a solution for? Are you tired of taking meds for joint and other pains? Hills and Valley Medicare Center on Grenville Street, St. George is here to help you heal. We will help you map a path to your full recovery. Visit us Monday to Saturday for a consultation with our on-site doctor, physiotherapist, and massage team. You will be glad you did. Our Medicare Center, a proud member of the Hills and Valley group of companies. On the hilltop or in the valley, we are with you wherever life takes you. Hills and Valley Pharmacy. Your health is our business.
Last week on All Climate Reality.
What we're encountering is something we're calling an enhanced greenhouse effect. This is a phenomenon where the gases that create the greenhouse of the atmosphere are increasing in concentration.
The amount of concrete that we have in our society now compared to 30 years ago is amazing, because when the sun hits that, it's not getting into the soil where we have carbon sequestration happening. So that bunks back and goes back into the atmosphere and increase the carbon dioxide stock. But a lot of people want to live on the slope, so we deforesting the slopes, and trees is one of the biggest inhibitors of carbon dioxide. They're taking so much of it. So every tree we cut means that there is going to be an increase in us producing greenhouse gas, and increasing our greenhouse gas.
Join us this Wednesday at 8 p.m. on Our Climate Reality as the discussion delves into the impacts of climate change. GBN Television, Channel 7 and 11, K105, and all our social media platforms.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Dr. on Call, and our telephone line is open, the number 435-2041. If you have any questions you would like to ask the doctor, you can do so now. The number again, 435-2041. Yeah, so you can give us a call, and we will do our best to try and provide the answer for you. Doc, while we wait on our callers, we are in the month of February. It's Cancer Awareness Month, and there is a lot going on. And of course, we will be focusing, as we said, on different types of cancer as we go along. But coming up to the end of the month, there is the focus on childhood obesity. I just wanted to mention that briefly in passing as we get ready, because we will be touching on that, because it is very, very, very serious. We are seeing a lot of our young people who are already obese, and that is a recipe for you know what in a couple of years. So I think it's important that we just briefly touch on that, and of course in the meantime, callers, any questions you may have on leukemia, you can give us a call, 435-2041. Doc?
Brought up now because on March 4th, the world recognizes World Obesity Day.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And simply because obesity, or that state where you weigh more than 35% of the allowed weight for your height, actually shows that we at an increased risk for a lot of stuff.
Okay, so Doc, just hold it. Just hold it there a bit, Doc. We have a caller online. Oh, well, we lost the call. Sorry. Yes. Mm-hmm.
So we are at increased risk for a lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
All of the chronic diseases, hypertension, diabetes, all of the complications. So we're having kidney failure, having strokes, blah, blah, blah. But cancer has listed obesity as one of its main risk factors. So again, we know that if you're an obese child, right, you run the risk of becoming an obese adult.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't seen this. There's not enough research yet to see whether obesity in children predisposes to cancers in children. But we know that look at children, little obese children get up to be big obese people. And if you already had that risk factor, try and imagine the changes that you are going through that will enhance your potential for developing these chronic diseases. This year the ministry is trying to focus on wellness, and we have to take into consideration and work against the things that do not make us well, that will not make us well. Tonight was kind of sad. I don't normally watch obituaries, but tonight the TV was on as there, and out of 20 people who have died, and condolences to their families, of course, right? If you die before 70, you die prematurely. And out of 20, I probably can say easily 15 people that in the time which I watched, okay, people? Now, I didn't look at the whole of the obituaries on GBN, but out of 20, I can say easily 15. That's 75% of the people that I looked at died prematurely, 31 years old, 25 years old.
Yeah, there were
Is there
quite a
anything
few
we
in the
can stop? Maybe we
40s.
can.
Yes.
A lot of 40s, a lot of 60s, but earlier 60s, some 50s. It's, for me, it's of grave concern because I wish I can see what causes of death they have been, because I think we need to really address this, and we have to go back to a state of wellness, and obesity is our biggest challenge. So on March the 5th, Sunday, March the 5th, and there's a walk from Tantine. It's an awareness walk, a community awareness walk, looking at obesity. This Saturday is World Obesity Day. This Sunday we do the walk. So let me give a little background, because the Chronic Disease Commission actually did a consultation on for childhood obesity to develop a national plan. Okay, to combat childhood obesity. We have seen in our environment, in Grenada, in Carriacou, in Petit Martinique, just research among our school-age children. I'm going to tell you, children, in fact, they're going to go to be fat big people, okay? We have seen an increase in the percentage. As a matter of fact, it doubled for one group of children. So if it was 2.2% of the kids were obese this year, by the next 2 years, 4% of that population was obese, right? And it has to do with our lifestyle. We're not as active. We eat all the bad food. What the hell is pasta, boxed foods that is just sugar and water, poor nutritious food. When we have our indigenous foods, the yam and the
that's right. The potatoes and all of that. Yes,
of which we don't need to eat a lot in order to have
fresh veggies
to be filled. And we've been consuming that. But we'll talk about that when Lydia comes or whoever comes on to talk about that. When we talk about it later when we talk about childhood obesity and combat it, because trust me, we have to take up the strongest ammunition that we have. And the strongest ammunition that we have is going to be parents, families, what's going on in your home, what's going on in your household, right? That's what we're going to have to approach. We're going to have to work collectively as Grenadians. Nothing can work out if just government doing it. People have to be invested.
Oh, definitely.
Children must be part of it. You know, when you're doing that consultation, I'll tell you when. You remember when you were having the challenges with teachers on walk to rule?
Yes.
And we had planned a consultation for November. That was 2019. And the teachers were on work to rule, so they weren't accompanying the children. And we decided not to have the consultation. And by February, things that had settled down a little. It wasn't the best. And we decided we're going to have this. Luckily, we did it then, because after that was late January, sometime in February we did it. Because then the children, we decided we're not having a consultation on childhood obesity without the presence of children, little children, primary school age children, and high school children. And I can tell you, we are all blindsided by the kids because they had a personal experience. They understand the deleterious effect of the foods that they get in school. They understand what it is to not be able to run up and down for every day for half hour and it's not lunchtime. They understand the fact that they spend a lot of time sitting down. They know and they see themselves putting on weight. They understand what it is that you give me a soda or something sweet instead of giving me nice
fresh,
clean water in the pipe to drink. Right? They listen to me. They put us stand up. The adults were in shock. And we're happy that these kids came because they put a totally different perspective. Right. And we understood how endangered they felt. We therefore have a responsibility to ensure that we can have programs that will enhance their quality of life, to ensure that they're not older people. And we weren't even talking about people dying from hypertension. We're just talking about just people being well. So I hope that this work goes off well. I hope that Grenada comes on board, because the Rotary Club of Grenada and actually Rotary of the district, Rotary 75, which is like Eastern Caribbean, Barbados, us, right? Is actually taking this on as they have taken some components that came out of that policy and plan, right? There's a policy and plan that was developed by the Chronic Disease Commission to approach the challenges of childhood obesity. And Rotary has decided that they're going to work with us not to ensure that we can mitigate the challenges. We can take control of the challenges that childhood obesity have been posing for us. So this is a walk for everybody. It's a walk for everybody. We will hear a lot more about it as the weeks go, but we need to be there, and we have to get conscious. And we want families, we want parents and children, and this is not for rich or for poor. This is for all of us, because the truth is, at the end of the day, all of us in this together. There's no social barriers that keep us from being, might make us more obese if we poor and can buy good food, buy healthy food, or we're not producing healthy food. But we have to change our attitude and eat differently and live a different lifestyle, and especially expose our children to what is best for them.
Right. I have a question on the WhatsApp platform. Someone is asking, good night to you both. If you did surgery to remove colon cancer and it has not spread to any parts of your body or lymph nodes, and you cleared of cancer in the body, is it still required, or are you still required to take chemotherapy?
So most people think that on a cellular level, you can cut off this thing, but you don't know what has escaped you. And so sometimes chemotherapy, most time chemotherapy is when you don't, let's say a doctor has removed everything and the borders are clean, you don't see anything, you don't have any lymph nodes, right? But sometimes chemotherapy is still recommended to ensure that you have not missed anything.
Okay.
So it's more precautionary and to ensure, remember that word I used at the beginning, survivability.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So ensure that you survive. So that's what it is.
Right.
If you had lymph nodes further out, you might have needed radiotherapy, which is a more advanced form of therapy, which we don't have here in Grenada.
Okay, wonderful. So, Doc, we're basically out of time now. We have, I think we have a call on the line. Let's take that call. Doctor and call, good evening.
Hello?
Yes, good evening, caller.
Hello?
Yes, good evening, go ahead. Caller, are you hearing me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, go ahead, please, with your question.
Are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Go ahead.
I'm hearing you, sir.
Right, go ahead.
Yes. I have two questions.
Sure.
Yeah. The first is the nodules under your jaw. Are they connected to your lymphatic system? Those nodules you have underneath by your throat there, in the bottom there, are they connected to your lymphatic system? And the second question is, I have a relative who used to sleep in a whether drying coke or a buchan, and he developed leukemia. Could you explain, Doc, what probably happened there? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, caller.
Thank you for calling. Nodules. So if you can actually feel the nodules, they've actually been activated by something, whether you've had recurrent sore throat, whether you had a tooth infection, because you're really not supposed to feel the lymph nodes, okay? But all the lymph nodes are interconnected. There's one lymphatic system, and they all join up and go into the into the liver, right? And empty out eventually into the vena cava system. So yes, they all connected.
Right.
I don't know. I mean, cocoa tends to be very natural. We don't use any chemical compounds. I don't know what comes out of the well, I expect you sleep upstairs the buchan and not in the drawer where the in the buchan, I guess people store bags of cocoa, and I don't know what fumes it gives out. And this is interesting. That's a very interesting question. I honestly don't know what to tell you. The truth is, maybe if he slept up in his bed up in the main house, he probably would have had leukemia equally, right? But I find the question intriguing because it's related to something that we do and don't think, whether the fumes that we get from fermenting cocoa or what the bag with that nice smell of chocolate when you put it in the cocoa's bag can have carcinogens. So that's an interesting question, but I really can't answer it. I find it very interesting. I find it intriguing to say the same. So thank you for
I
sharing.
mean, there are a number of things that could have happened. I mean, it could have been anything. But I guess you will have to.
There are probably other risk factors, like we have family who's had cancer and all other things we talked about. But this is a question for us as Grenadians, because my grandfather had a buchan, and you can smell the cocoa. So is there something I inhale that can put me at risk for developing? And like just said, people who clean, the women who clean in Boston who develop leukemia and other forms of cancer because they inhale. Who knows what chemical substances are given off when we put it, once you put it in there, you put it in a warm place, we don't know what chemical
that's limited. Okay.
Right.
Wonderful.
Reactions occur. So thank you, sir, for that question, but I can't answer you.
Okay.
And I'm sure this is something that we probably have not. Maybe you can look in places like bigger places like Ghana and stuff who produce millions of tons of cocoa. Maybe they've seen maybe they've seen this, so maybe the research can help you. Just Google relationship between cocoa fumes and leukemia. And leukemias.
Right. So, Doc, just before we wrap, just quickly a little overview of leukemia, and then we'll wrap for this evening.
So this was interesting because this is kind of out of the box. We talk about cancers, and even though leukemias are very rarely occurring diseases, they do occur.
Yes, they do.
We don't see it as much in our children, but it do occur. I had a young patient who died of leukemia. This is 20 years ago, right? It's a reality. Leukemia is a cancer of the blood-forming tissue and eventually of the blood, where you have the same craziness that goes on for all cancers. Cells start to multiply and behave badly, right? You have this proliferation of abnormal cells that actually suppress the real cells in your bone marrow. In your bone marrow is where blood cells are manufactured. Red cells to carry food and oxygen and other nutrients around to your body. White blood cells mostly for defense, and platelets, which help us
with clotting.
Right? If you sit down and suppress those cells, right, and allow other bad cells to go, and the bad cells are going to take over, because the lymphocytes or the white blood cells are the ones that really take care of defending you. Any little thing, they defend you. It doesn't really matter who, what, where, why, how. That's it. But if they're suppressed by these crazy growing cells, patients will have challenges. They'll have anemia or low blood count because their red blood cells just can't function and carry hemoglobin. They'll have fatigue. They'll have infections. They'll have bleeding, because all the cells that take care of these basic things are immobilized, for want of a better word. They can't do what they have to do. You'll see lymph nodes, because the lymph nodes trying to help to make more of the cells, right? Or sometimes you just have invasion of these crazy cells. Patient would lose weight, they'll be sick. Who would get leukemia? People exposed to other chemicals, especially radiation stuff. People, we know that some cleaning compounds, benzene. And benzene is also found a lot in laundries where they do dry cleaning. So they've been changing how we do dry cleaning, because that happens. We know if you smoke, we know obesity contributes to a lot of cancers, although it's not mentioned in some of the things I've read, but we know that obesity is a problem. We know if your family has had a history of leukemia or cancers, you're at risk. We know if you've had a cancer before or leukemia, you can actually have leukemia again or have leukemia. So there's some, and if you're a man, and if you're a man in the late 60s, but it doesn't mean that young people don't get. Children get acute leukemia. They tend to respond a little better to therapy. They don't always, but they tend to respond better. Acute leukemia means that all those cells are growing very quickly. Chronic leukemia means that you have a slower growth of those crazy cells, so you have a better chance at being able to contain it, to treat and go into remission. You can have acute leukemia, but you can have acute leukemia of the myeloid tissue, which is bad, because those are the basic tissue that really we need just to be well in general. So if acute myelogenic leukemia, you stand a great chance of being very ill and dying as an adult. Okay? Right. We know that if we diagnose early, we'll be fine. We should be fine. So once you start feeling well, we know that you should go to the doctor and make sure you get the doctor in information requires. And if you yourself suspect, tell the doctor, I think this is what's going on, right? And we also know that you would need different levels of care. How do we investigate? We do lab tests, we do ultrasounds, we examine, we ask questions, because sometimes just examining and ask questions gives us that high index of suspicion and a probable diagnosis, so we can know exactly what to do.
Right.
Yes. And then we know that therapy can also be expensive. We know that lots of modern day therapies, some of which we don't have access to, like stem cell replacement and the biologics, right? They end up, they have a name like MAB or FAB at the end, okay? So, and they're quite expensive, but they work. Because they approach your immune system, which is often the compromised part of your body. And we know that we really need to take care of ourselves in general.
Oh,
right?
yes.
We know that we still need to screen for breast cancer and screen for cervical cancer and still screen for prostate cancer. And we know that leukemia is not very common, but there's one very rare form of cancer that Grenada takes number one for its occurrence. I've probably seen a report of one patient, but only Grenada is who has the highest incidence. I guess because one happens in our little population, so it shows up, but it's very rare.
Okay.
And I want to advise people, just go on, read. My favorite instrument.
That's right.
Not for TikTok only. It's all there. Google it. You have a question, ask. And always you can still send a question. You could WhatsApp questions to Godfrey, because we're willing to answer other questions.
Definitely so.
Thank you, gentlemen, for raising my curiosity about the Buchan and
sleeping and cocoa. All right. Well, Doc, thank you very much. It was indeed a pleasure. Just before we go, sorry, we've also heard about the phrase that the cancer has gone into remission. What does that mean?
Into remission? Oh,
yes.
When the cancer goes into remission, it means that the parameters you look at, whether it's the blood count, whether it's, you're getting back weight, whether your blood count, because usually your bloods we check to see how these cells are behaving.
Right.
And that is usually when you're in remission. You're well, and your blood count maintains is maintained at standards that are considered wellness.
All right. But if you so someone does that and that has occurred, so it has gone into remission. But what are the chances of it getting malignant again?
That it recurs? I guess 1 in 2. The other does or it doesn't.
Okay.
So, and it depends on the kind of cancer you have. It depends on your age. It depends on the other comorbid factors that you have going around. If you've had diabetes for 40 years and your whole immune system is whacked, if you're older, you probably wouldn't even go into remission. You probably, So that's a very individual response.
Okay.
Whether or not you will stay in remission. Because a lot of people have cancers and think they will stay in remission and don't necessarily do so.
And the same applies for...
And they go on to live their lives.
The same applies for leukemia as well.
Same applies for leukemia.
Okay, all right. Doc, thank you so very much. It was indeed a pleasure. It was quite interesting talking about this. And we will be touching some of the maybe less common conditions. Of course, as we say, not as common, but they are there. From time to time, you do hear of these cases that pop up. And I'm sure, the people who they affect will definitely like to get information that they can use to help themselves. So definitely you will be hearing that. Don't forget, childhood obesity coming up soon, but we're still in Cancer Awareness Month. So folks, please be careful. Stop the smoking, eat properly, exercise, give the alcohol and so on alone.
The highly processed foods,
that's
too much
right.
chemicals in there.
Get enough sleep, lots of water, and keep yourself in company that can help you to develop. Thank you very much. It was indeed a pleasure.
Have a good night, everyone.
Yes. Don't forget to join us tomorrow evening for episode 3 of our Climate Reality. Tomorrow evening, we're looking at the impacts of climate change. You don't want to miss that. So until tomorrow, please God, do have a good night. Take care. All the best.